closer. Uh-oh, was that for me? Okay. I heard a ding. I didn't know if that was my computer or something weird happening. I think we're moving closer to Web3 and really fully into Web3. And we can probably say we're in Web3, even though I say we're 2.5. I'm being cautious only because I think we haven't fully mastered security and, of course, education. And so those are the things that I think now we're toying with and talking about and really diving more into. However, we are in Web3. Web3 is where we are. We are in the middle of it. And of course, now is a great time for you to really own what you create and step into that. And so I think that if you have not thought about what you are doing in this space and how you're doing it, that's what we're going to talk about the next 2 times we're together, is what does that look like and what could that look like? And we're going to talk about things like digital ownership, transparency, and this human aspect that I think people think is lost and is leaving, but it's not. It's even more and more important. And so let's just dive right into it. So let's talk about some strategies to get involved in Web3 and to lead innovation. You are in this boot camp because the goal is for you to really embrace it and really like find your space in Web3 and be some of the leaders in Web3. And if you're already leaders and you're doing the boot camp as a refresher or some other aspect, then now you can really think about, are you leading the way you need to in order to really settle in and position yourself in Web3 the way it is today? Many of us think about it the way it was before. So right now we're living in this time where technology is reshaping our ownership, is reshaping our identity, community, and reshaping the opportunities. There was a time when people thought about Web3 and they only thought about it as being cryptocurrency. And it's more than that. It's always been more than that. And I'm a believer, and I am an advocate for blockchain technology. And so it has definitely been more about that for me all the time. But I think some people entered the space under the guise that they were going to get rich quick, that they were going to do some of these things to really be billionaires and live like the Elon Musk and the Bill Gates of the world, when really Web3 is about participation. It's about decentralization and it's about innovation. And so the question is not whether Web3 will impact your industry. Yes, it will. The question is, will you participate as a consumer or will you lead as an innovator? Which will you do? Or will you do both, right? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. It could be both. But innovation begins when curiosity replaces fear. So you can definitely be an innovator, but now it's this idea of being curious. And I think that's where many of you are, because that's why you're here today. So let's dive into them. So I'm going to just show I don't have a lot of slides. I put them, instead of separating them, I just put them all on a couple of slides. But I do want to go through them. And so they'll be up a while, but I'll talk through each one of them individually. And so first is to move from fear to understanding. And I think many of you can check this off your list. I think this is where you are. You are already there because you have selected to join and be a part of this boot camp. Web3 can feel complex. It's so many elements to it. If I were to list them, which I'll mention some of them as I go on today, it's a lot. And it's not just one thing. It's not just the digital economy. It's not just cryptocurrency. It's not just the NFTs. It is so many layers to Web3, which is why it is, and it's kind of a catch-all phrase when talking about several of these technologies at once. It introduces new language and new systems. So part of starting with understanding is, do you know what blockchain is? Do you know the purpose and the significance of blockchain technology? Decentralization. If you really want to start with understanding, you want to know what decentralization means. And I know some of that will be explained and you would dive into it into this particular boot camp, but also I'm going to talk about some of these when we meet again on Monday. How ownership changes in the digital space. Innovation begins with literacy. So a lot of the things that you're going to hear over and over is this idea of ownership and what that looks like. Innovation begins with literacy. So part of that, I am a literacy professor. That's what I do in my day job. And so that's important to me, that not only are we literate as in print, but also digital literacy, AI literacy, all the literacies are captured. You cannot lead what you don't understand. And so part of strategy 1 is to understand these things. Number 2 is learn the ecosystem, not just the hype. And I think I've already talked about this one, but I'll just mention that Web3 includes the blockchain technologies, the smart contracts, NFTs, decentralized finance, or DeFi, what people call DeFi, decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. It includes even what now is all the craze, AI. It's all of those things. And I think the great, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, I think it's on the next slide, the one thing that is really all the craze right now for me is AI and blockchain, that intersection and the integration of them together. So, but all those things are encompassing. So I encourage you to focus on use cases and not trends, and ask the question, what problem is this solving? Whatever technology is entering the scene, is that is the question. So strategy 2 is learn the ecosystem, learn all aspects of it. I've learned just enough to be dangerous. I'm going to be honest. However, once you learn a little bit about all of them, then you can decide where you want to position yourself. Strategy 3 is secure your digital identity. What does that look like? Your wallet, whatever platform you decide to use becomes your identity. Learn digital wallets, security practices, ownership of digital assets. Leadership in Web3 begins with responsibility and awareness. So one of the things that I encourage you to do as you embark on this is start thinking about, what does that look like for you? What is ownership of digital assets? What does that look like for you? How are you going to navigate that? Are you going to follow the trends, or are you going to do like I recommended in number 2, is not to follow the hype, but learn the ecosystem and figure out what fits best with what you're doing. The 4th one is start as a participant. So